So welcome to Precision Golf for today's fitting. Got Jonathan here with me today, looking at fairway woods primarily, but there's quite a particular focus, I believe.
That's right, yeah. The top end of the bag, so 3 wood, 2 iron and 4 iron, and particularly I find them difficult to hit. They're quite inconsistent. And my theory is that if I could potentially replace the 2 iron with a 5 wood and the 4 iron with a 7 wood, I might have more success. And I'm particularly interested in the 3Ds of, you know, tightening up dispersion, average distance, and trying to understand if you can get that a bit more consistent, and a descent angle as well, which gives me an element of kind of predictability with my shots. So.
And in terms of, I guess, looking at the 5 wood, in particular the 7 wood for the 4 iron, is it that higher flight that you're looking for in particular, or is it more just the feeling that that would give consistency rather than saying, so for example, some people might say, I want to go a hybrid versus the 4 iron. Is it particularly to get that as higher flight as possible?
I think so, yeah. So with the 4 iron, that's my kind of 200-yardish shot. Yeah. And I find myself needing that club a lot. And if it's an approach shot, then I think, well, I want to be able to understand in a more predictable manner what the run out's going to be, what my my carry should be, and then this can be low, can be high, it's just a little bit unpredictable. So from that perspective, I think I just need a little bit more consistency. Got it.
And we had a brief conversation beforehand, so the 2 iron driving iron is
it is a one-trick pony.
Very one-dimensional, low bullet. When it's good, great.
Yeah, so I can hit that off a tee, but when it comes to off the deck, it's literally impossible to hit. I actually cannot hit it.
Well,
so
MO there then. Give me a club that's usable. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, got it. Perfect. So we'll get a look at the baseline, a couple of shots with driver and the 3 wood to see where those are, and then we'll structure it back from there.
Great. Thanks.
A little bit blocky, but would you tend to play when things are going as you want them to? Would you tend to play with a slight draw, or pretty neutral ball flight, or would a slight fade be the
neutral to baby fade is like a good day. This kind of not getting out of the way enough is my fault. So I'll try and work on that, and we'll get a couple of good ones. That possibly goes to the right as well, yep.
It's more of it's not a big shape, it's a bit of a push fade, but actually flight-wise that's in a good place.
It's kind of me, like I say, it's me not quite getting out of the way enough, which is a good metaphor for just me as a person. I should work on getting out of my own way in a lot of things. That felt better.
You say just maybe a little higher on the face, so it's got a little bit drawn back, but we'll see one more, but that gives us a good, I mean the previous one in particular from a distance point of view gives us a good benchmark. We'll see one more with that.
I can't hit a fairway, but it's just a good shape. Somewhere between those last two, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow, finally.
Give yourself a talking to, that's the, okay, yeah, so fly-wise, the second one was a hair better struck, but actually that last one squared up and gave you a nice strong flight. So there's probably another 5-10 yards in there on a really clean one, but gives us 285, between 280 and 290 on a solid hit. That's a nice benchmark. Okay. And flight's in a good place as well, so it's not doing it a weird way, which is always a nice thing to see. Okay, did you want a low tee for this one?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I can do this. Well, actually, I'll need the tee for the 2 iron, but I can do this either or. This one.
Whichever you prefer.
Should we go off the deck for this one?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting with the Ping fairways. They've always been quite good across the face, but until the 430, they've never been a high launching head. They've always been a little stronger base loft. You know, so 14.5 is their standard loft versus you know, other brands will say 15, but actually measure more like 16.
Oh, right, okay.
So they've always promoted a fairly strong launch angle. Unmistakable sound. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so again, the spin's in a nice window, but it's a low launch, partly low loft on the head. If you think your driver 10.5 is lofted down, it will actually, the driver will measure more than it says on it. So that'll probably be measuring more like 10.5. Yeah. And you'd normally look at about 5 degrees from driver head loft to fairway wood head loft, or first fairway wood head loft. But being at 14.5, it's a little bit less.
Okay.
But off the ground, you do get on top of it and squeeze it. So you hit down it a little bit. Yep. So you're naturally de-lofting a bit, which gives you great contact, but just pulls the launch angle down a little bit as well. Okay. So
maybe we do need to see a couple off the tee as well in a bit?
It's probably worth, yeah, I'll see one more. I mean, it's not a stupidly low flight, but it is, relative to where a lot of other players would hit a fairway, it'll be pretty strong. Okay. But it still goes well.
That's a bad one.
Get rid of that one.
Right. What we'll have to do, John, is use the previous model. Right, okay. The reason is because the adapters come off the
Swing. That got into the bottom of the ball, launched it a little bit more. Okay, a little bit of spin, but nice neutral hit. Okay, let's pop it on a low tee.
Is there any indication of like face contact? Again, is it more?
I can pull that up as well. The only thing with these ones with the dot on is they stay off the contact point. That's the only thing with those. Otherwise, it'll whip them off and we lose the spin number. Yep. So, I mean, strike-wise on those last one, yeah, little bit into the heel side, both of them, little bit. Good height up the face, but little on the heel.
Yeah. Okay. Good to go?
Yes, sorry, yeah, we're ready when you are, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's a little deep, but a good line. Okay.
The 3 wedge.
It'd be a great trick shot in match play, wouldn't it? What club are you hitting? 3 wood.
Oh, that's gone left, I think. Very left.
Okay, let's see the one more with that. That can just dig into the surface. Okay. Do you get off a tee with it? Do you get a little bit more draw when it's off the tee?
I think well, it's weird because if I feel not super loose, then yes, it can be a little bit kind of like first tee type shot shape. But then throughout the round, it sort of develops into more of I slide myself back off it properly, and it just ends up being like a nice little buttery fade.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
So I'll try and get to that point.
Let's see the one. This still gives us a reference for where it sits, certainly from a yardage point of view.
Yep.
There are, I think some of the heel contact, so from a weight point of view, it's fairly strong. So the shaft weight in both the driver and the fairways are on the upper half for driver and fairway shaft weights for amateur players.
Yep.
So, 80, 6 odd grams on this one. There's quite a lot of shaft there, and I think the heel contact comes mainly as a result of that. So as you start down, the club's a little more back hip.
Right.
So that's where partly that bit of a fetch and a drag around comes. But if you get to here, there's nowhere for the club to go. It's going to go out. So the heel goes towards it.
Gotcha.
That's, I think, where some of that, certainly when you're not as loose, that's not clearing as much. So you're not able to get out the way to get the club back in there and square it off. So it wraps around a little bit more. So potentially shaft weight, well, shaft weight's not going to help it, certainly. But I think strike point, a little bit of that's definitely where the club gets a little bit behind, and then you've got to get it out.
Makes complete sense. Four.
Kind of what it does as well is that it makes the good ones very, very, very good, but it makes the differential of good, bad quite stark.
Yeah, that felt awful.
But actually, delivery line very neutral. I just got a little bit deep and underneath it, so popped it. It's not me being nice either. Actually, the path was really nice.
That felt like it would come out the toe.
Yeah, a little high as well. And that one, I think it's a case of making sure tee height doesn't get, it says teed like a very good lie in the fairway rather than teed up.
Yeah.
Partly you get that little bit of a drive and then sort of shaft lean, which helps you squeeze it, which gives you great ball striking with the irons and the fairways when they're on the ground.
Yep.
But I mean, if the tee gets a bit high, especially with the shallower head, it goes down onto it, catches the top edge, pops it.
Yep.
So I'm probably going to do one more off the ground.
Okay.
And then
it's good because I lost the tee.
Oh, it flicked back, I caught it. Very, very repeating path lines though. Very stable on that. Yeah, so certainly you can see, ironically, off the ground, you can squeeze it and pinch it a little bit more easily.
Yep.
But it's definitely a little bit of playing catch up. So let's say you've got to be on to get the best out of it, but then it's great.
So, okay, so do you think that the remedy is in
shaft weight's likely to be, well, not like shaft weight's going to be the main key to that.
Okay, cool. Lighter or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because actually proportionally where your irons are in the Modus 105s, in the X, which you've got there, 112 grams, steel goes from 80 to 135. So they sit much more in the kind of just above middle. Yeah. That's pretty heavy. Right. So kind of middle ground would be 70, 75, and it's 10 grams more. So it's quite a lot of club there to get back on the ball, especially if you've got, you say, got a disc issue. That's going to mean you've got to work hard to fetch it through. Sure. So that's more likely to get you working a little laterally, get a little blocked off and the club's stuck, and then you've got to play catch up. So rather than being able to just turn and collect it.
Sure,
so,
yeah. Okay.
So I'll get the tee back for this one.
Thanks. Yep, good idea.
I mean, this one in summertime is a teeing off club. You're getting it chasing out, there's going to go like no tomorrow. Yeah,
but again, I think there's a feeling of confidence with this one.
Yeah.
If I feel good and I'm swinging relatively free, then yeah, absolutely, it's a good club to have in the bag. But beyond that, it doesn't really serve a purpose for me. So, and that's my issue really.
Yeah.
I need something that I can, you know,
a bit more versatile.
Absolutely, yeah. All right, not the best connection. The thing is with these, you can definitely tell from the contact through the ball if it's sweet spot or not.
Yeah, definitely.
That certainly wasn't.
I mean, that one in terms of by even driving iron, 2-iron standards, the 790 in the UDI has never been a particularly forgiving head. When it goes, it absolutely goes.
And it feels great. But you've got to be, you know, swinging like absolutely in a pocket.
Yeah.
Which, how often do you do that? Maybe one out of every 10
times. If you're a recreational golfer.
Exactly. Marginally better, I think.
Let's see one more of that. Certainly, I mean, launch and spin pretty much bang on where I'd expect them to be, down, you know, just about in double digits on launch.
Yep.
Spin in the realms of where a good 3-wood would be, but where the launch stays low, that's why it creates the flight it does.
Yep.
Strike-wise,
that was the one.
Yes, then down low 3000 spin, but you know, sounds like a stupidly obvious comment, but for that shot, you're not going to beat that with any other club in the bag from a job roll point of view. But you know, 25 yards of run out is. I
mean, directionally, again, it's me sort of getting a little bit stuck, but just you can't beat that feeling when you know you've hit this well.
Yeah.
It's great, but it doesn't happen very often, and that's the problem.
Let's get the marker with the 4-iron there as well. Great, lovely.
All right, so this is, as I said, my typical 195, 200-ish shot.
Hit. Let me just rejig that as the.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought I tagged it as something incorrect, but that's fine. Got a couple from warm-up swings with it.
Might be a bit left.
Okay. Yeah, so a little left, but that gives us basically a baseline in terms of the where the flights are and the shot patterns and things. So you're not naturally a high ball player in that. Let me just take actually that can go off. Don't need those. So you create a nice strong impact position, but your natural launch angle stays a little on the stronger side, other than driver where it's teed up and you launch it up.
You're hitting up, yeah.
So yeah, from an action point of view, you get, particularly for iron play, you get a really nice sort of strong kind of, not heavily, it's not, this is an exaggeration of it, but you get an on top and a squeezed delivery, which is great from a strike point of view.
Yeah.
So like the 4-iron there, 3 or 4 degrees down, it's not heavily downward, but it's slightly on the stronger side. What that means is you're getting ball turf, which is great for particularly mid and short irons, is lovely. What it does do is it brings your natural launch angle down a little bit.
Okay.
So when you get to the top end of the irons, you know, 11.5 launch, spin's okay for the 4-iron there, but the launch is strong-ish.
Yeah.
So that's potentially where, it's not a horribly unforgiving club, but in terms of getting, where you play and the shots you want to that higher flight, softer landing shot, that's still coming in pretty strong. So from an average point of view, it's only 70 feet high. So it's not super low, but it's coming in and chasing when it lands rather than coming in soft.
I think the point on that is it can, so today that's the shape, tomorrow it could be a higher ball flight. That gives me, I guess, the inconsistency of not really understanding what the predictable outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
And again, if we're looking at the variables in a shot, and I'm thinking, all right, well, slightly downwind. I've got just over the yardage for this club. I needed to land it soft. I think that I need a bit more consistency with flight. And like I said, this could be this ball shape or like a higher ball shape. So high trajectory.
Your ball flight, I don't see changing as much as you feel it might.
Okay.
Because unless you materially change your delivery pattern, like throughout fairway, 2-iron, 4-iron, you get into your natural position as a covered position. So actually your push out right isn't, as some players will be kind of coming across and opening it up. You actually, it's a little bit of a handle lead that holds the face open, so it's not an added loft position, it's just a slight shaft lead.
Could that explain why when I'm consciously really trying to get out of the way, that maybe I do have that kind of out to in kind of delivery back to the ball?
Yeah, because your path's very neutral. So you're not particularly, so with the irons there, you're half a degree into out. And 2 and a bit with the woods into out. So it's not heavily inside creating a big push. It's actually, it's face angle and potentially being, the more you get a little bit of that handle moving forward, the face naturally just opens up with it.
Right.
Rather than you getting inside and leaving it there, it's actually working neutrally, but because you get the handle lead, the face stays a little bit open. But hence also the slightly stronger launch profile.
Interesting.
And long irons are intrinsically harder to hit than a bigger head where there's more weight separated from the face and there's more moment of inertia, resistance to twisting. But those will also naturally give you a little bit more flight. So
that's the theory, right? So this club, the 2-iron, again, inconsistent, difficult to hit. So my theory is that if I can potentially get something with, like I said, a more predictable trajectory, dispersion pattern and average distance, then I think I'm going to feel much more confident with it. And certainly, like behind the ball, I would feel more confident with it. That 2-iron just gives me the creeps now.
You say there's not an awful lot to look down. And when it's good, it's great. And the thing is, almost one of the difficulties for you is when they're good, they're very, very good. But a bit of a miss, then there's a massive drop back, and then what are you playing for and kind of strategizing. So what we'll look at is we'll start off with the 2-iron alternative, sort of one back from the 3 wood. So height and carry distance and carry and stop being a priority for this club.
I think, like I said, I'm interested in like the 3Ds of dispersion, distance, and descent angle. And then just to get a more consistent understanding of what that particular club does, or that head and shaft combination does. And fine tune it from there, because like I said, this can be wayward with all those variables.
So I'll start with the current 5 wood to this just as a baseline. And we'll look at that club, look at shafts, and get the timing as clean as possible.
All right.
And dial in from there. So
perfect.
2 moments grabbing that head. So start with the ping 5 wood that really to match into the club that Johnathan's already got, just as a baseline. So start from there and then we'll work out shafts. So shaft wise, I'm just going to take a bit of weight out, really kind of get a feel for what changing that weight does. Majority of what the shaft does is helps you time the strike. So it helps you and the club arrive at impact at the same time. So flex,
sounds good.
Kick points, all the bend profiles do a little bit to flight, but they're not going to materially affect dispersion. So it's been said over the years that too soft it hooks and too stiff fades. Incorrect. It just doesn't do that. Too stiff is normally too heavy, so then gets stuck, so people have to work hard and leave the face open. Too soft generally goes too light, so you flip it over and hook it. So primarily, like any stick and ball sport, if the weight's wrong, you're out of sync and you've got to do something to deliver it. And that's then normally where the left-right dispersion comes in. Obviously there are technique elements, but your swing's pretty neutral. So it's not like we're looking at 4 or 5 degrees from in to out or out to in and having to mitigate a lot of face rotation in it. So just going to start at something, so 75 grams, fairly neutral in terms of balance profile. Use this as a start point. So there's a lot of, initially you're going to be testing of, what dead weight, balance point helps you to move naturally with the club and it to find contact for you. Cool.
Good to go?
Yep, ready when you are, thank you. Okay, so immediately going lighter as you fire through the club, the handle's out in front of you more.
Yeah.
So you're not having to then stand up out of it and fetch it.
Okay.
Which is good. So some of where you feel you get a bit stuck is the club getting behind you a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to change that
On the
shaft
left
a little bit.
That's okay.
So I'm going to give you a bit more weight in the bottom end of the shaft.
Yeah.
So the base, the total weight, as you come down from the top, that basically keeps it with you as a kind of complete club, and then where the weight is depends on how you use the pull on the handle.
Sure, right.
So you need a little bit in the bottom end of the shaft, otherwise the more confident you get with it, you'll put a little bit more kick into it and it'll just over-rotate. So I'm just going to move the balance down the bottom end of the shaft a little bit.
This, I don't know, feels heavier, I guess?
Just a little bit, yep. Okay, so certainly a bit more balance in the bottom end helps to create, for a better phrase, that sort of later hit. So
yeah, okay.
As you accelerate the handle end, if proportion is more weight in the bottom, it creates a little bit more of a drop. So as you keep accelerating the handle, if it's a good thing, it drops it in so that then the release, the squaring comes at the right time. If it's a bad thing, it gets stuck and then you're either going to come out of it or fetch it.
I mean, I guess like the whole thing is like marrying up the, I guess the, what would the word be, like the optimal point of acceleration or something, or just like the actual
pretty much
delivery back to the ball has to be like,
it's allowing you to move freely and the club fall into line with that. So because we all use slightly different muscle groups or accelerate at a different rate, or some players with a kind of a hip snap versus someone like Bryson who's got big kind of chest and upper body rotation, it's putting energy into the club in a different way.
Sure.
So it's by changing the total weight and where the weight is in the length of the shaft and the club. So for example, it could be that that shaft swings really well but needed a little more head weight rather than weight in the bottom third of the shaft.
Gotcha.
They create slightly different leverages and patterns. So it's just tying that up to the way that you move, because that's the bit that stops you having to place the face on the back of the ball and just turn onto it and collect it.
Yeah, it makes sense. Is this standard length?
So it's kind of like a forward length. It's a hair shorter than your 3-wood's actually slightly shorter than a standard length. So it's actually the same length as that.
Stood over it thinking this feels kind of as long or a little bit longer maybe than my 3-wood.
Yeah, so it's because your 3-wood on the shorter side, it's the same length as that. But if we had a 3-wood and a 5-wood, every shaft would have about 1,000 shafts on the wall. So,
yeah, sure.
So it's a hair longer than a standard 5-wood length.
Okay, gotcha. Would the recommendation be potentially to put this, maybe the version of this in the 3-wood?
That would be the bit that will kind of interesting to see on this, that would make it easier to move the strike away from the heel, but also just to tie up the timing a little bit, certainly.
Okay.
Okay. Just gonna, out of interest, I'm gonna move it, just move back to the previous one, but increase the head weight slightly.
Okay.
Because with that,
I think that was possibly just me, maybe, I don't know, playing it higher.
well, so the difference between those two shafts, there's only a 0.1 of a degree variation on face line on this setup.
Yeah.
But gone from paths a little less into out, but the face is slightly open with this shaft, whereas with the previous one, it was a hair more into out, but the closing a bit more. So I'm going to go back to the other one and just increase the head weight a little bit.
Okay. Low and left.
Yep. Let's see one more there.
Wow. Mm.
Okay, I'm going to go a little, I want to find where we go too light. We know we can't go heavier than the other shaft.
Yeah.
I just want to take that down a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, that felt all right.
Good contact, yeah.
It's weird how a lot of stuff's going left today, whereas like all week it's been going right.
Well, it sounds like a sort of quite. They come from the side because you're pass into out.
Yeah.
Depending on what you're doing with that kind of top hand and working club face. So with a heavier setup, gets behind, and then if you come out of it, it's going that way, but it can flip as well. The two misses are from the same route.
Part of the same family. When you've got the extra weight, do you then have the propensity to flip, or is it the other way around?
Depends on the player.
Okay.
So I'm very right-handed. So my collection, if the club gets behind, I'm that way. So for me, behind means flip left.
Yeah.
You get others who are a little more kind of top hand dominant, who will pull on the handle to kind of get it to the ball, and then the face opens up. The bottom line is, if you miss it right, in the back of your head, that last one going right is there. Body stalls out, the head can catapult. So it sounds like a proper cop-out to say they're both. There's potential for both, depending on your kind of dominant movement pattern. Let's say for me, it's always left. I don't slice unless I've done something, unless I'm really worried about left and I've just overthought everything. But my natural miss is always going to be a bit left. Okay. Interesting enough for you, I think the more you get to the top of the bag, it's interesting. Earlier on, we were seeing those little fades with the top end of the bag.
Yeah.
I think when the dead weight gets heavy, it's the right miss.
Yeah.
If we go lighter and don't have mass in the bottom end, then you can overpower it and rip it left. So it's just finding if we get enough weight in the bottom end. So with that one earlier, the really good swing with that one, you could really see the club drop down into line, and then you can just carry on going with it.
Yeah, I mean, that felt good. The good one that I hit with that one, that felt really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It's sort of like you've got these kind of like outliers that you want to kind of get rid of and find that sweet spot. Yeah, sweet spot.
Yeah,
and have that middle ground.
Yeah, it's fine if you've got one side of miss. That's fine because you can strategize and manage it. Just knowing, right, if my miss comes in, that's where it's going to be. But if you've got both in the back of your mind, then you're kind of aiming down the middle and hoping, which is quite tough. It's a tough place to start from. So I'm going to go a little bit lighter in the shaft just to find that bottom out point.
Pretty interesting so far. There's obviously a lot of data to kind of digest and consume and look at, but it gives you such a detailed breakdown of exactly what elements within the makeup of the club affect which direction, dispersion, direction as well. For me, having the two-way miss essentially, which is kind of either a little bit sort of soft and to the right or a bit stronger to the left, what Simon's trying to do is essentially put together components that will help me average that out to get me hopefully more in the middle, which is the desired outcome, I think, from this. But so far it's been really interesting.
So just taking that base shaft weight down a little bit more, but leaving a bit more weight in the toe end.
Yep.
Don't need the extra head weight on that. Right. There we go.
Thank you. Is this ever so slightly shorter, this one?
If it is, it's only about a 1/16 of an inch. Sometimes the colour of the shaft could affect it, actually.
I think the way to describe this was it felt from sort of transition through the downswing, through impact, it felt very consistent. Like it was, there wasn't any whip to it. It was just really, everything was moving in a straight line.
Okay, yep. Yeah, and face to path 0.1 of a degree. So
yeah.
Always nice when feel and outcome match.
Definitely. Oh, just got a bit stuck with that one.
Okay.
It's not that far off line though.
Yeah, just a little open on the face, but yeah, okay. That's just going to take it a little further on the way.
Yeah.
So as we go through these, we're essentially kind of ruling in or out certain options.
Yeah. Fine tuning now.
On the way down, won't do too many hits, but then we'll go back. Certainly go back to that one afterwards. This is just a couple of grams lighter again.
Okay. Everything like married up on that first one that I hit with that. That was just like, everything was like,
yeah, and so when it
nice,
feels
just like autopilot almost.
Yeah, and it should, when we, the better the setup gets, the more natural it should feel, simpler to deliver the club head.
Yeah.
So that's the bit where you're not having to find contact with it. It's going to, when you get the right pair of shoes, it frames your foot correctly rather than having to put a heel wedge in or a half insole or something like that to make it work.
Feels a little bit lighter, is that fair to say?
Yeah, a couple of grams lighter, yeah.
Oh. Mm.
I mean, from a head point of view, spin's very, very consistent from this head.
Yeah.
Which is good. Okay, so that's gone a little light. Just as you went to put the power on from the top, it just wasn't there and kind of got away from you.
Yeah, it feels kind of, odd.
But we're at the point where that's about 13 grams lighter than your current one.
Right.
So,
considerable.
Pretty sturdy, yeah. Let's take it. Let's just go back into that. And the thing is, because your swing's strong enough and technique's good enough to make it work, it's very easy to start thinking, well, is it me being inconsistent? There's actually, because the good one's very good, so you're going to go, well, it's clearly got the soft bit on the end. Whereas actually, ironically, what it does is it just means that to get a good result, it's got to be a really well-timed move.
Yeah.
Which is then what creates the absolute ripper when you get it. And if you're slightly off, it bites hard, and then it's a big miss. So it's quite hard to know, well, what's the swing, what's the club, is it the player, is it not? Well, if I've hit it well, does that not make it me?
Obviously, the key is to have a repeatable swing. And I feel like majority of the time I have got that. But yeah, you're right. If there's any element that's not quite there, then everything gets thrown out. But certainly the previous one, not the one before that one, the one before the black and yellow one, that just felt, for some reason, it just felt like I was in sync with it. If that makes sense.
The weight's much more so in the bottom end of the shaft than, well, I say much more so, it's more in the bottom end than a lot of shafts. So it's one I use a lighter version of my driver because specifically because of that. And so that's the bit where, by not going quite as heavy as where we were, as you come down, the handle stays with you, but then the weight in the bottom drops it in, which then allows you to create that, can I say, late hit, to hit against it to time the impact. Whereas if there's less in the bottom end, the problem is it doesn't get late enough to then let you time it. You get into it, you get through it a little bit soon, so you're going to cast it and flip it a little bit.
And is that the reason why we were seeing some really high ones?
I think with the 3-wood, some of that's the total weight being a little heavy. So the moment it gets behind, then it gets more of a, you're delivering more almost the club face down to the ball rather than it getting out in front and then shallowing into the ball. Okay. So Sort of.
No, that makes
heavy
sense. That explanation
and
makes
not
sense.
head heavy enough means here, and then you can flick the head at it.
Right.
Heavy and heavy head goes back in there somewhere, and so it's sort of combining the lighter dead weight to mean as you rotate and fire, the handle stays more out in front of you, but then we're using the weight in the bottom to keep the club in plane. This has got a fatter grip on. I'm just going to, we use air for these, I'm just going to put a normal size grip on.
Okay. Oh, it's a bit chunky, I think.
Definitely need the weight in the bottom of the shaft. Right.
Have we ruled that out?
Yeah. See that? So because if it's the club, as you start to build speed from the top, you're going from 0 miles an hour to 100, it just doesn't drop into line. So you can see it just get out of plane straight away. But because I know the parameter I'm changing, you're kind of looking for particular triggers of kind of yes, no.
Gotcha.
And that was definitely the no.
Fair enough.
Can I just ask, sometimes you rule something out almost immediately, whereas other times it takes a few goes. Is that just at your level of experience where you can kind of see something that the rest of us can't perhaps?
I think where as I'm changing each bit, I'm looking for particular keys to make them kind of keep them ruled in or rule out. So that one, I knew it wasn't quite as tip heavy, but just wanted to make absolutely certain. And then where the bottom end went straight away, there's only so much you can do with weighting the club head up to mitigate that. And it also just wasn't as good as some of the earlier ones. So it was kind of just making, that was a bit of I knew it was on the bottom end. So the moment you see it go, get sort of effectively through the ball a little bit soon, then I know I can sideline that. So yeah, there are particular ones where I can easily rule it out after one swing. If you can see the swing's a decent move, so the path line's good and everything, then you can say, right, I know I can get rid of that straight away.
Cool.
It's interesting, there's a little bit from a strike point of view to come from that, but both first swings with it, the face to path's been 0.0. Oh, sorry, 0.1 on the other one, 0.1. So yeah, so that bottom end, the club head end's lining up well through the ball. There's a little bit of contact to come from that, but balance point in the shaft's clearly very good.
I think we're definitely honing in now. It's starting to feel good.
Little left, great contact. Maybe a little overdrawn.
Is that a little bit low on the face maybe, or no?
Just a little bit, yeah. Just a little bit. I'll see one more of that.
I would say out of those two swings, the first one felt more balanced.
Okay.
So maybe it was more of a swing variance than anything else there.
That was a nice move.
Yeah, that felt good.
That one looked like, as you say, you look very stable in how you move through the ball there. And yeah, so with this one, the ones where you kind of go, right, that was a nice, that felt a good move. The face to path incredibly square.
Yeah.
So, okay, right. I'm gonna,
well, the whole thing from the top through the ball just feels very suited. Natural feeling, like it doesn't, nothing feels forced.
Yeah. So that one is, from a setup point of view, the balance point is fairly kind of particular, and it is quite down the bottom end of the shaft, more so than a lot of shafts.
Yep.
But that's the bit that allows you to carry on going with the swing and essentially leave the face on line. So you've got quite a strong recovery of the club head late on. Right. So it's quite a kind of a late, your action has quite a kind of late hit to it, but you require the weight in the bottom to get it to drop in enough in the first place.
Yep.
So I think that's where that one feels, you say, a little bit kind of more together and connected all the way through, because you're not losing the bottom end and then having to kind of steer at it and hold it off. So there's maybe a couple of I won't get rid of that one quite yet, but a couple of very slight variances on that. I'm just going to I think I might have those next door. I'm just going to grab certainly one other shaft, maybe two.
Okay.
So very similar dead weight.
Yep.
Well, you may find that the balance profile of that VA shaft is, it is fairly, I say particular, it makes it sound extreme, but is fairly particular in terms of balance point. So it might just be that it's not that we can't beat it. And that last one's a lovely move, lovely swing, good ball speed, good flight, straight, pretty good. So.
All right.
Yeah, solid.
That's high, isn't it?
A little more flight, yeah. We're seeing one more of that. That has popped it up a little bit.
To be honest, that might have been me potentially putting it back half a ball, maybe.
Wouldn't change it that much, especially considering face to path and things are all pretty square as well. So it's not like the delivery changed noticeably.
Low one, maybe?
It's not bad, it's not as good. It's close,
Yeah.
but the other one's a little stronger, a little better off the face.
Yeah.
So that one definitely more spin off that.
Right. Yeah, like in terms of feel, it feels like we've got a winner.
I mean, sometimes it is a case of, there's, they say this is due diligence, but it's, and what you don't want to do, for a fitting point of view, you don't want to find it first shaft, then you've got nowhere to go. Which does happen. Does happen. You'd love to say it's skill. First shaft would be an element of fortune, but you then have to go around proving why it's the best one.
Yeah, exactly.
So, let's see.
Or just pretend it's another one at on the sixth go. Oh, here's a slight variation on the first one.
Better ball speed straight away.
Ooh. Not mad at it.
Nice. So what's good is, first one was always a bit of a sighter. That one you've committed to a little bit more and it's stayed with you. This one,
I felt like I tried to really hit that.
Yeah, yeah. Really nice
But,
thing is the face stayed
but the
really
the
stable.
feel of it makes you feel like you can.
Yeah, because you're not having to manage that position through the ball.
Was there a difference between kind of any of the core numbers on the one before that one and that one? Or was it roughly the same?
So club speed went up a mile an hour.
Right.
Path half a degree more from the inside on that last one, but
Okay.
actually face to path is squarer. So a little more, so the first one was a little heel side which held the flight a bit, but it was a little bit more closed on the face. I said that one is a slightly softer tip than the other one we're looking at. So
Yeah.
it is a little more spin. So they're both actually from the same brand. The Sinister is designed to be a little lower spin, a little more stable in the tip. The Slay is a little softer tip and designed for a little more flight.
Okay. Should we do one more?
Yeah, one would be great. I'll pop the other one back in.
That felt good.
Definitely moves well. Yeah, definitely moves well. Okay. Yeah, they are quite substantially the best two. So a little shift in balance point in the shaft. We don't need to weight the head up at all with this one. So this should feel a little more weight in the bottom end.
maybe a bit out of the toe.
Just going to take a fraction, there's a little extra weight on that. I want to take a little bit of that off just to bring that down a touch. Then having swung the other one, that one looked just a little harder work again.
That's right at the bottom, that was.
I'm going to put the other one back in. I think where that was the first one with the balance kind of well, more where we want it.
Yeah.
I think interesting enough going back to it, having swung the sleigh, that looked a little easier to deliver.
Yeah.
So I think this is, yeah, it's very close, but I think it's asking you to be a little bit more on it to get the best out of it. Whereas the sleigh version is just a bit easier to get consistency from.
What I found interesting about the sleigh was on one of the swings, because I tend to have like, I wouldn't say it's super wide, but just like the feeling, the sensation is width. Mm-hmm. And not a lot of wrist cock. And there has to be an element of wrist cock, right? Yeah. Like here, there has to be. But it feels like, to me, it feels like I'm doing this. Whereas on the second one that I tried with it, I actually sort of, I don't know, like naturally felt like it added a little bit more, which might have helped, you know, something throughout the swing, which married it up a bit better. But that's the first combo that we've done today where I felt that.
Okay, yeah.
Which is good because it means I potentially can deliver the club in a couple of different ways and still get a consistent result, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and certainly the consistency of performance off of that was very good. Just held it off a little bit. It's interesting, that one definitely doesn't require you to be quite as kind of dynamic to deliver it. It looks like you can swing it rather than, going back to that, look, you had to hit at it a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's got a bit of an easier flow to it.
Yep, definitely. I felt good.
Yeah, so bar the one shot, this is quite, I'm going to filter out some ones we don't want, but the where you're really talking about the consistency side of it being a key thing.
Yeah.
We should see quite a, let's get rid of the ones we're not so fussed about on the dispersion side. So bar the one that was a little bit heavy, which is that one. I don't want to sugarcoat. If I take that funky one off it, the spread of shots with that is a little bit tighter. Yeah. You know, whereas the good ones with this one, which are those,
are they the orange ones?
Those green spots are, you know, the good ones are right up there, but there's a little bit more of a spread, which is where you're having just to work a little bit harder to deliver the bottom end. So when you're swinging it really well, it's great. But that one you're miles more in control of. So that tolerance on face to path, which are the small numbers underneath here, you've got to bar the one. I'll do a similar thing. I'll take out any really funky ones with that. Yep. Let's just see if
like the minus 4.5 one.
But even if I take that out, there's still, so the good ones are good, but the variation in, actually we'll also see it here, variation in distance, 2 yards versus 9. And I've been quite kind to that one. 0.8 of a degree on face to path, which is the tolerance either side, versus 1.5. It's twice as much variation in club face. Your delivery, 1 degree, 0.3 of a degree, they're very, very, very consistent, both of them. Yep. But the 1.5 mile an hour ball speed, 2 yards versus 3.7 and 9 yards. That's a really, really key thing, because you're putting the club on the same line each time. But once we get the club to sync up with it, all of a sudden, bang, up goes the, tightens up the dispersion.
Yeah.
But it's doing it with a really nice stable spin rate. So if I was being kind of ultra, I mean, I'll check another head as well, a couple of heads just to make certain, but we could tighten up the tip of the shaft just to drop the spin a fraction, couple of hundred revs, just to make sure it's not popping up in the air.
Yeah, okay.
But head's certainly producing a good flight. We don't want a lower launching air because I don't want to knock that flight down. But flight window's in a good place.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
In terms of, we were talking before about kind of descent angle. Do we have
Yeah, so that one
some consistency there?
Stick in. Well, again, the height and the descent angle, because the shots are consistent. So again, you've got a 1.5 degree variation, a 6 foot variation in height.
Yeah.
So because all the other bits are falling into place and you're delivering the club consistently,
yeah,
we're getting that coming in the same way each time. So as you say, you know what it's going to do when it lands, and you know what job it's going to give you, versus, you know, say even no matter how consistently you hit that 2-iron, with it coming in flatter, you're reliant on ground conditions to dictate what it's going to happen.
Exactly, and that's the problem.
Versus this, if it's soft, it lands and stops dead at 220, 225. If it's firm, you get a couple of kicks on, it goes 230,
yeah,
235 maybe. But
well, that's exactly what I'm looking for.
In the same place
because
each time.
With this, it's completely unpredictable because it can then run off the back of the green, and you think you've hit a good shot, and it's like,
yeah,
okay. But with this, just I kind of, yeah, I want that idea that the parameters of, all right, well, I kind of understand roughly what I'm going to get when it lands on the green or around the green. And
so flight-wise with a 2-iron is very consistent, but the ball speed variation means you're going from, you know, 190 carry to 217 and 215 total to 240. So you've got a 16-yard variation in carry and total versus 2. Yeah. So yeah, I'll get
super
a couple
consistent.
Couple of other heads to compare, but that's going to be a very hard combination to beat. I'm going to go the Cobra head. I also want to look at where the Titleist is going to flight at. Yeah, because I'm not looking to really change the pitch of spin very much, so we don't, you know, we're not, TSR3 for example, will spin it too low. The LS in the Cobra is way too low spin, but these can neutral launch and spin is what we're looking for. So into the Cobra head, this one. So again, maintaining a little bit of flight and spin rather than knocking it down.
Yep. Better, I think.
Okay, that's a little low on spin. I might just put a fraction more head weight on that, just to, because that one spin rate has dropped quite a bit. I just want to make sure that's not an anomaly.
Yep.
So I wouldn't have expected it to now. It all depends. You know, sometimes head and player produce different flights player to player. So,
yeah.
But I wouldn't expect it to be that low. So. Double check that.
It could actually just be me just delivering the club slightly shut. Like when I look at it visually, there's not as much guidance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's with the pings, you've always got that.
It's like the really the contrasty white lines. Yeah.
Whereas it is very indeterminate. This one.
Yeah.
Not as clean a hit, which I think part of that's changing the spin a bit. It's not with where the ping was at as well. It's definitely not better.
Yeah.
So just the strike doesn't sound quite as clean as well.
So I am a ping fanboy after all.
Well, it's working for you. So I think part of it with the ping head is where the depth of it sits. It's whilst you do squeeze it, but you're not heavily down on top of it. And sometimes just the dynamics where the ping heads have been a bit shallower, got the weight sat a little bit lower in the head, just do suit particular deliveries. I've always needed weight up the head a little bit more.
Okay.
But I'm not particularly different on delivery, so. Okay, and that's the Titleist head.
Okay.
Okay, so better hit straight away in the Cobra. Okay, nice spin window as well.
Yeah. Weird. Felt like it kind of came out the toe, but it's kind of faded a touch.
That was that maybe felt toey because that was middle, and you're normally fractionally inside.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Good ball speed on this.
One more?
Yeah, I think one more will be good. Yeah. I think very little between this and the ping. It'll be interesting to see whether, from a numbers point of view, how the two compare. But
it's just like automatically the ping just feels the most natural to be over.
Mm-hmm.
Bottomy.
I think unless one was totally standout, if the ping feels more comfortable stood over it, and it can be, for as trivial a reason is you're used to seeing this one on the bottom of that shaft, but the performance is good. I think possibly with the ping, what they do well is it's a very flat sole. It seats really naturally.
Yeah.
Potentially just sits down to the back of the ball a little bit more cleanly.
I think so.
But you know, that sort of comfort blanket confidence is a very, very important part. You know, you've got to look forward to using it. And
if I take those three options, I think the Cobra one I couldn't actually determine face direction.
Mm.
Then the Titleist one actually felt like it was slightly curved. Might not have been, but it was like a perception thing.
Yeah.
And then the ping just feels very natural. For me.
Yeah, I think the shaping, the line around the toe there can make it look a little bit more bulged.
But it felt like it was a pronounced bulge.
Yeah.
I mean, probably not. It probably is relatively flat, but
you know, it's the last thing you want is too much conversation going on the head stood over the ball.
Yeah, exactly.
If that feels like you can just point, shoot, and put it down and swing, then yeah, that's got to be a good thing.
Great.
Just came out of that a little bit, that was all.
That might also go left, I think.
Yeah, so path got a little bit more inside on that, and that might be where balance came back off to get it back there, just dropped a bit behind and then had to roll it.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely murdered from a ball speed point of view, but yeah, just path got a bit more into out with that swing. Yeah, and you stayed more centre. Actually, ball speed's better going back to this.
Okay.
So probably a little bit of an overcompensation from the one that went left.
Well,
but
I know exactly what I did there.
Cleaner contact.
Because where I should be is there, and where I was just there then, just to try and see what happened. But that was an expected outcome. if I just try and square that all back up. Should be a bit better, maybe a bit left.
That one went a little bit left, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So pathwise very square. And potentially shows where almost, I think that sort of swing, that almost the less you do, the more you just turn and let the club come, allow the club to come through rather than getting it through. Actually, almost the freer it is, the squarer it gets.
Let's do one more.
Swing line more neutral again on that last one though. Nearly as well hit, but that's a squarer shot. Yeah. So it's the ones where it almost feels counterintuitive. The ones where you just free it up and carry on going, because the club's now dropping in the line, it finds that square channel.
Yeah.
You're almost overly good at manipulating the face, and that when you do it quite a lot. So some players you can say, "Oh, just work the face close," and they just can't do it.
Yep.
Unless they've got to feel like they're hitting a hook to square it off. For you, it's almost the other way around. You don't need to do it very much to create shot shapes. So it's almost halving what you feel you've got to do to not overdo it.
Yeah, I mean, shaping it is interesting. I can try and actually play a fade.
Yeah, so you can see path get a little more out to in, certainly see face open on that, and there's your fade. So the nice thing is that you can see you're not fighting, you can just move the swing and there goes the shot. But case in point there, you've gone 9 degrees out to in. So you're, as a golfer, you have a strong ability to move the club around. The danger comes when you do that because you hit a lot of shot shape, or if you're trying to correct something, you'll make a big correction rather than just fine tune. So it's almost, so I find if I think about the shot and then try and do it, I double up and overdo it. So it might be someone who's even just picturing a shot and react to it rather than overworking it. But, so yes, that's, it's spun a lot, but you've worked it 5 degrees down, 8 across and opened the face. But your neutral swings are in a very, very neutral place, but that setup stops you having to do something with the club face, and then that gets you into the point where you can just literally stand and deliver, and as long as you free it up, easier said than done, then you're not having to manage the club face, so that's when that dispersion really tightens in.
Perfect.
So it's a bit of a roundup for Johnathan with the 2-iron replacement. Is 5 wood certainly a great option in terms of getting that, getting a bit of elevation, but it's not letting the spin flare up too much, whereas the 2-irons come out like an absolute extra set. And the ping head, not just because of what you're using, but actually the head works really well, but I think that visual comfort of seeing a similar head profile, and actually I think those lines on the face give a nice clear mark for setup as well, which something they do. Titleists have all the grooves marked, whereas that frames the bottom edge and makes it a little bit simpler to look at. But primarily that shaft weight coming down about 7 or 8 grams, but get the balance in the bottom end. For you, that's a really, really critical part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of addressing the ball, the ping club actually frames the ball really nicely, and it feels like I can actually control the club face and stand to the ball with it in the right place effectively. Whereas with the Cobra one, it felt a little bit kind of like I wasn't quite sure. And with the Titleist one, it actually felt it was a little bit curved, so I was a little bit kind of unsure with that.
Where is it aiming?
Yeah, and then the combo of that and the shaft we've kind of gone with, effectively made me feel completely synced up through the shot. And where we've come from, which is unable to hit a 2-iron anywhere apart from off the tee, to having the ability to be a lot more consistent with dispersion, certainly it gives you a bit of extra distance as well. It's just been a massive benefit, so really happy with it so far.
When you can let yourself kind of free up and swing with this, I mean the first batch of it where almost the second half, as a player we start to try things a little bit, where the first batch where you're just swinging, that grouping was really tight, and really pleased to see that as we dialed that in. The Sinister was very close, but when we hit that, it just clicked.
Definitely.
Which is always nice.
It's a good combo.
So we're gonna carry on and have a look at the 4-iron replacement, but for the purposes of this video, we'll bookend it there. Thank you very much for being involved. It's always great to have actually quite a particular requirement from a club and swing side, it's really fun to dial that in.
Definitely.
So hope you liked it. If you have, subscribe, hit the like button, do all the above, and we'll see you next time on the next fitting.